All right, today we are going to talk about aspirin and its the mechanisms by which it prevents inflammation. So, aspirin or salicylic acid was invented long before we had a full understanding of the mechanisms and pathways by which it works. However, it's still used today pretty effectively to alleviate symptoms of fevers and other pains caused by inflammation. So we're going to kind of just walk through exactly how it does that. So as many of us know, inflammation is the natural process our body uses to protect us against pathogens, and it also helps by increasing blood flow to a site of injury to promote repair. That's why you'll see it get typically like red or swollen. If you hit your arm on something, you'll see the site start to swell up. It's just increasing blood flow to that area, and basically making it less of a chance of getting infected. So the site will signal for inflammation to begin, a lot like how blood clots begin to form. If you're familiar, so like if you rupture your blood vessels, the platelets in your blood, the little proteins, will detect collagen in the blood, and that will basically um, start a cascade that begins blood clots to form. Similarly, if you're injured in some way, if an injury is detected by like cellular rupture, the site will use what's called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are a group of lipids that are formed within almost every cell. Here we can see kind of like the general structure of a prostaglandin. Um, they look a lot like other lipids, with the carbon chain, but without a phosphate group or head. So the fatty acids that make up the phospholipid bilayer of the cellular membrane, they'll be cut off by this enzyme, phospholipase A2. And from there, they'll be synthesized by an enzyme called cyclooxygenase, or we'll kind of talk about that. It's referred to as COX, and there's basically two forms of COX, COX 1 and 2. And the hydrolysis of these little fatty acids here, catalyzed by cyclooxygenase, they will form this little carbon ring, and then this double bonded oxygen here, and then this hydroxyl group here. And from there, prostaglandins will be used for a myriad of different functions within the body, ranging all the way to the hippocampus and hormonal responses, to constricting blood vessels. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So basically, aspirin is going to covalently modify the formation of the enzyme cyclooxygenase by altering the structure. So as we know, like if you alter the structure of an enzyme, they're basically made perfectly to fit to whatever they're reacting with. So if you alter the structure in a way, it's going to alter the function, and in this case, basically render it useless. So COX-1, like I said, it has a very, these prostaglandins have a pretty wide range of uses, such as gastromucosal protection, maintenance of renal blood flow, and regulation of platelet activity. And COX-2 is primarily used for inflammation. It's not as readily available as COX-1 is pretty much always in the blood or in the cell by some means. And COX-2, a lot like platelets, is they're activated when an injury is detected. And we will get into a little bit more about how altering this enzyme, cyclooxygenase, will affect the formation of these prostaglandins. So, as I said, aspirin works as a COX inhibitor by irreversibly blocking the synthesis of arachidonic acid. And arachidonic acid is the precursor to forming the general prostaglandins. And then from there, they'll be synthesized into the more specific prostaglandins that control various body functions, like I was talking about, like in the stomach lining, or initiating inflammation. And here we can see how the COX complex is supposed to work, but aspirin or salicylic acid, by donating an acetyl group to this serine residue, serine, it should be 530. I don't know where the book said serine 530, so I'm going to go with that. But by salicylic acid donating the acetyl group to that site, it's basically going to block the pathway by which prostaglandin H2 synthase 1 will form this general prostaglandin H2. And prostaglandin H2 synthase 1 is basically just another word for COX, as we've been talking about. By the prevention of the prostaglandin H2 to form, it will, similar to if basically you took out the platelets, if your body was unable to produce platelets, you wouldn't be able to produce blood clots. Similarly, if you take a medication like aspirin, the salicylic acid, donating that acetyl group and preventing the pathway by which COX is able to synthesize the prostaglandins, you are basically preventing them from being formed. And you're also preventing some of the other bodily functions that the other specific prostaglandins are performing or taking place in. So basically, taking too much aspirin can do things like hurt your stomach lining and cause ulcers and stuff like that. But in the short term, it's a very useful drug in preventing inflammation and pain, as prostaglandins do. So there you have it.